In today's episode, Shadow Explorers, prepare to dive into the darkest depths of the internet. I'm Raven Shadowmere, and welcome to another chilling episode of Midnight Mysteries, where we uncover the most terrifying stories from the dark web. Have you ever wondered how far someone would go to escape financial troubles? What desperate choices might a person make when pushed against the wall? Well, today's story will make you rethink the meaning of online games. In the year 2023, Samantha Collins, an ordinary college student, stumbled upon a game on the dark web that promised to solve all her financial problems. But what started as a quick fix for her debts soon spiraled into an unimaginable nightmare. Picture yourself in a graveyard at midnight, surrounded by whispers of something that shouldn't be there, or worse, handing over your most treasured belongings to a stranger in a dark alley, feeling that each step takes you deeper into an abyss of terror. What Samantha and her friend Danny discovered will send chills down your spine. They weren't just playing a game, they were being manipulated by forces far beyond their understanding. But before we dive into this disturbing tale, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell. After all, you won't want to miss any of our macabre accounts, right? And who knows, maybe those notifications could save your life one day. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows of the internet. So, Shadow Explorers, hold on to your seats. The story I'm about to tell will make you question every click you make online. Are you ready to uncover the horrors that hide in the darkest corners of the web? The college campus felt like a maze of unfamiliar faces, each immersed in their own struggles and ambitions. I, Samantha Collins, was far from an exception. With a notebook in one hand and the other pressed against my temple, I tried to ignore the cacophony of thoughts buzzing in my mind. My psychology classes were fascinating, but the financial pressure was consuming me. Student debt loomed like a lurking monster, and the idea of an uncertain future left me restless. "Sam, are you okay?" The familiar voice of Danny Brooks pulled me from my spiral of worries. He approached, his laid-back demeanor and smile always managing to lighten a bit of my load. I'm just thinking about the bills that are about to come. Tuition, rent, food. I sighed, looking down at the ground covered in dry leaves. Sometimes, I feel like I'm going to drown. Danny sat down beside me, concern etched on his face. "You know you can talk to me about it, right? What do you think about looking for a job? It could help ease some of that pressure." "A job? And when am I going to study? What would I even do? I could end up neglecting my classes," I said, shaking my head, still skeptical. "And what if I can't find a job that helps pay the bills? It'll just make things worse." "Hey, calm down. You're one of the best students in the class. An internship or a part-time job could be the solution. Plus, you could do something related to psychology, which might even help with your studies," he suggested, winking playfully. "Maybe you're right," I murmured, but the idea of working while studying still felt daunting. Time slipped away like sand through my fingers, and I feared the pressure would only increase. Later, while browsing the internet for job opportunities, an intriguing link caught my eye. The final game. Curious, I clicked it, and was greeted by a dark, enigmatic page. Disturbing challenges promised generous financial rewards. A part of me hesitated, but the temptation of a quick escape from my financial woes was too alluring. "This can't be real, right?" I muttered to myself as I read the details. "Challenges? Easy money? There has to be a catch." With each line I read, my heart raced. What could be more dangerous than the life I was already leading? I was so tired of fighting. The idea of a game that could provide the financial freedom I desperately desired was almost irresistible. When Danny arrived later that day, I couldn't contain my excitement. "Danny, you won't believe what I found." "Another crazy idea?" He raised an eyebrow, already suspicious. "It's a site called The final game. They offer money in exchange for challenges. Look at this. I showed him the screen of my laptop, my excitement nearly overflowing. Sam, this is dangerous. You know many sites on the dark web are traps, right? This could be a scam. Or worse, something much more sinister. The concern in his voice was palpable. But what if it's real? What if I can make some money? We could solve everything at once, I argued, hope igniting in my chest. I don't like this. You should think twice before getting involved in something like this. What do you know about it? And who's behind the site? He looked at me seriously, but his words seemed to dissolve amidst my growing obsession with the idea. I know, but I'm so tired of racing against time and debts. This could be a chance to change everything, I replied, already envisioning a life free from that suffocating pressure. Tension hung in the air between us, and even though I knew Danny was right, the thought of escaping that reality made me restless. The darkness of the unknown began to seduce me, and the line between reason and temptation grew ever thinner. The cold wind of the night seemed to whisper dark secrets as Danny and I approached the cemetery. The full moon cast a pale light along the path, and the shadows of the trees danced as if they were alive. My heart raced in my chest, a mix of adrenaline and fear. Are you sure this is a good idea, Sam? Danny asked hesitantly, his eyes scanning the surroundings. It's just a cemetery, Danny. It's just a place with some tombstones. I tried to sound confident, but my voice betrayed a slight tremor. And remember, this is just the first challenge. If we succeed, we'll earn money that could help us escape this financial situation. He sighed, still visibly reluctant. But what if something goes wrong? What if we find something we shouldn't? The tension in his voice was palpable, and I could see how he was trying to convince himself that there was nothing to fear. Look, think of this as an adventure. We have to face our fears, right? That's what the game proposes. I tried to force a smile, but the truth was that the idea of entering a cemetery at night was making me uneasy. Okay, but you're the one going first, he murmured, trying to joke, but he couldn't hide the worry in his eyes. With one last glance back, I stepped into the cemetery. The gravestones rose like silent sentinels, each with a story buried long ago. The place was wrapped in a sepulchral silence, and the only sound we could hear was the crunch of our steps on the overgrown grass. This is way scarier than I imagined, I murmured. Feeling a chill run down my spine, Danny moved a little closer, and we began to explore. The heavy, dense atmosphere seemed to wrap around us, and with each step, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Suddenly, a soft whisper cut through the air. Sam, did you hear that? Danny asked, his eyes wide. Yeah, I replied, trying to stay calm. It could just be the wind. But my voice sounded weak, even to me. The shadows around us seemed to shift, and I could no longer tell if it was just the moonlight or something more sinister. Let's get out of here, Danny insisted, the tension in his voice rising. No, wait, we need to finish the challenge. I'm not backing down now. Determination surged within me. I wanted to feel that adrenaline, that sense of overcoming fear. I pressed deeper into the cemetery, and with each step, the whispers became clearer. You shouldn't be here. The words seemed to echo from all directions. My hair stood on end, and I quickly turned to look at Danny. You heard that too, right? Sam, this isn't normal, he replied, his voice trembling. We're messing with something we don't understand. I know, but we have to keep going. With each moment, I felt more powerful, more alive. It was as if fear was transforming into strength. Finally, we reached a more open area of the cemetery, where a large mausoleum loomed before us. Let's go over there, I suggested, my voice now tinged with a mix of excitement and fear. Danny hesitated but followed me as we approached the mausoleum. The silence was deafening, and I could swear there was something moving inside. When I got closer, a shadow flitted at the corner of my eye. Sam, look! Danny yelled, and on impulse I turned in the direction he was pointing. A quick, furtive movement. Let's go. We need to leave. He grabbed my arm, But before we could move, a stronger whisper echoed. "You shouldn't have come here." Panic took over us, and adrenaline surged through my body. We ran out of the cemetery, the feeling of fear now mixed with an odd exhilaration. "We did it, Sam, we did it," Danny exclaimed, still panting as we stopped outside. "But that was insane." "Yeah, but I feel like we did something powerful," I replied, a smile involuntarily creeping onto my face. The challenge had been completed, and even with the lingering fear pulsing in our veins, I felt alive. That night, the feeling of accomplishment and adrenaline was almost intoxicating. Whatever we had faced, it had changed us in some way, and I was eager to see what the next challenge had in store for us. The night was darker than I expected, and the only light came from a flickering bulb in the corner of the alley. The air was heavy, laden with the smell of mildew, and something else I couldn't quite identify. I was nervous, my mind spinning with all the possibilities and consequences of what we were about to do. This challenge felt more intense, more personal, giving away objects that meant so much to us to a stranger. The idea left me unsettled. "Are you sure you want to do this, Sam?" Danny's voice interrupted my thoughts. He was beside me, his expression a mix of nervousness and concern. "Danny, think of the money we could make. And if we're quick, no one will see us. Just one delivery and that's it." I tried to convince him, even though my own conviction was starting to waver. "I just don't want us to get into more trouble. Last time was already scary," he replied, glancing around as if expecting something or someone to emerge from the shadows. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "I know, but we need this. I need this." And with that, I felt the weight of financial responsibilities piling up again. Danny hesitated, but we eventually agreed to go ahead. The challenge required us to hand over our personal belongings, something that represented a fear or insecurity, to a stranger in an alley. I had brought an old bracelet that my grandmother had left me. To me, it symbolized love and protection. But in that moment, it was becoming a burden I was about to release. When we arrived at the alley, a tall man in a hood was leaning against a wall. He seemed to be waiting for us, and a wave of cold ran down my spine. Danny moved closer to me, his body tense like a drawn bowstring. "What did you bring?" The man's voice was deep and drawling, as if he were speaking through fog. I brought this." I extended my hand, the bracelet shaking between my fingers. The man looked at it, his expression blank, but his eyes seemed to glimmer with a malice I couldn't ignore. "And you?" He turned to Danny, who was frozen. "What do you have to offer?" I brought this." Danny pulled out an old watch, a birthday gift his mother had given him when he was still a child. I could see the internal struggle within him, the reluctance to part with something so significant. The man took the objects with trembling hands. "Good. Now go away, you've done what was asked." I felt a mix of relief and a strange sense of loss. As we began to walk away from the alley, something in the air shifted. A presence, a feeling that we were no longer alone. "Sam, let's go, please," Danny said, his voice rising, almost in panic. I looked back and saw a silhouette in the darkness, a shape that seemed to be following us. Fear grew in my chest like a ball of fire. "Danny, it can't be. It's just our imagination. What we did wasn't that serious, right?" I tried to reassure him, but he looked increasingly restless. "You don't understand, do you? We're being followed. We need to run." He grabbed my hand, and together we took off. The sound of footsteps behind us echoed, a steady rhythm that quickened my heartbeat. We reached home, breathless, the doors slamming shut behind us with a sharp thud. The relief of being safe was brief, for when I looked at my phone, I noticed a notification that chilled my blood. "Danny, look at this," I shouted, showing him the screen. It was a message from Victor Hale, the former contestant who had disappeared. The message read, "You shouldn't have continued. The game is more dangerous than it seems. Know that you are in danger." The words echoed in my mind, and the adrenaline still pulsing through my veins now mingled with a genuine sense of terror. What had we really done? Darkness loomed over us as we walked towards the location of the next challenge. The air felt heavy, and I could sense a mix of excitement and anxiety coursing through me. "Are you sure you want to do this, Sam?" Danny asked, his voice trembling, betraying his fear. I looked at him, and for a moment, saw hesitation in his eyes. "It's just a ritual, Danny. We'll follow the instructions and then go home." "Think about the money." I tried to convince him, but I knew the pressure was weighing more heavily on me than on him. When we arrived at the old abandoned sanatorium, a strange sensation enveloped me. The walls, covered in graffiti and mold, seemed to whisper secrets of the past. "Why are we doing this, Sam? Seriously, I feel like we're about to do something very wrong," Danny murmured, glancing around as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. "Danny, aren't you having fun? This is exciting. We need to see how far we can go," I replied, trying to mask my own uncertainty. We began to arrange the objects we had brought according to the challenge instructions. A candle, some feathers, and a childhood photo of mine. "Why did you bring that?" he asked, eyeing the photo with a questioning look. "It's just a personal object that represents who I am. I think it's important for the ritual," I answered, trying to sound confident. The truth was, I didn't know exactly what to expect, but curiosity propelled me forward. As soon as I lit the candle, a cold breeze swept through the room. "Did you feel that?" Danny asked, his eyes wide. "It's just the wind. Relax," I tried to reassure him. But the truth was, I was starting to feel nervous too. I closed my eyes and began reciting the words we found on the website, an invocation that promised to reveal hidden truths. Suddenly, a wave of energy surged through the air, and the shadows around us seemed to come alive. I opened my eyes and saw indistinct figures dancing on the walls, as if contorting in a macabre dance. "Sam, this isn't right. We need to get out of here," Danny shouted, his voice echoing in panic. But something inside me resisted that idea. "Wait, we're so close. We can't give up now." I was fascinated by what was happening. The visions began to intensify. I saw people being consumed by darkness, screaming in agony, and at one moment, I realized one of those figures resembled someone I knew. "Danny, are you seeing this? Look," I pointed, but he was frozen, staring blankly at the ground. "Sam, this isn't real. It's just our fear." He was in a panic, and that started to affect me. "It's not just fear, Danny. It's something more. I feel like we're about to discover something incredible," I said. Even though a part of me was struggling against that belief, the darkness seemed to beckon us. And the more I tried to resist, the stronger it became. When I finished reciting the words, a ripple of energy coursed through the air, and a booming laugh echoed through the sanatorium. "What was that?" Danny turned to me, his eyes brimming with terror. "I don't know, but we need to leave," I shouted, pulling him by the hand. But before we could move, a shadow loomed in front of us, blocking our exit. "You have invoked something you do not understand." A deep, resonant voice reverberated off the walls. I flinched, feeling adrenaline surge through my body. "What do you want from us?" Danny asked, his voice trembling. The shadow merely laughed, a hollow and menacing sound that echoed in our ears. "Do you wish to know what true power is? The price you will pay is higher than you can imagine." Before I could respond, the darkness began to dissipate, and I found myself back in my bedroom, lying on my bed, the candle still flickering beside me. "Danny," I called, but there was no answer. The silence was deafening. I looked around and realized something was wrong. Objects in my house started moving on their own, and a cold sensation spread down my spine. "Danny!" I screamed again, my heart racing. The game hadn't ended, it had only just begun. The air was thick with tension when we finally found Victor Hale in a dimly lit, sparsely populated cafe. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with something more acrid. Perhaps fear. When he arrived, his presence seemed to absorb the light around him. His unkempt hair and weary expression did little to disguise the deep despair in his eyes. As he sat down at our table, Danny and I exchanged a nervous glance. "You shouldn't have come here," Victor began, his voice hoarse, almost a whisper. "The game. It's not what it seems." "We know something is wrong," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But we need to understand what is really happening." Victor glanced around, as if fearing someone might hear him. "The game is a facade, a distraction to lure people in. In truth, it's a cult seeking to open portals to dark dimensions. The participants who disappear, many of them have become sacrifices." "Sacrifices?" Danny exclaimed, his face pale. "Are you serious?" "Yes, very serious," Victor replied, anguish evident on his face. "I was one of the founders, but when I realized the true nature of what we were doing, I tried to leave. I was hunted, threatened. They don't let anyone escape." "Why are you telling us this now?" I asked, confusion mixed with distrust. "What do you really want?" "I want to help you," Victor said, looking directly into my eyes. "If you continue, you risk becoming just another victim. I have a plan to shut down the site, but we need to do it together before it's too late."
"How can we trust you?" Danny questioned, suspicion clear in his voice. "You were in charge of this."
"I'm not anymore," Victor replied, frustration evident on his face. "I regret it. And I'm here, risking my own life, to stop more people from suffering. You have to believe me." The silence that followed was heavy. Each of us processing what we had just heard, my hands trembled under the table. The idea that the game was a trap, a deadly trap, hit me like a punch in the stomach. I looked at Danny, who had a distant yet determined look in his eyes. "How can we help?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Victor explained that we would need to hack into the site's system. He had some information on how to access it, but time was not on our side. With each passing minute, more participants were drawn in, more portals were opened. The thought that we were in a race against time was terrifying, but adrenaline began to surge through me. "Let's do this," Danny said, his voice steady. "But we need a plan. We can't get caught. I have a secure computer, a place where we can work without being tracked. It's risky, but it's our only chance," Victor replied, quickly standing up. We left the cafeteria, and the outside world felt even more threatening. The streets were deserted, and darkness seemed to be closing in. I felt a chill run down my spine, a sensation that we were being watched. Whatever was hunting us was closer than we imagined. On the way, Victor shared more details about the cult. "They have eyes everywhere. No one can know we're trying to take down the site once they realize there's no escape." "What if they already know?" Danny asked, concern evident in his voice. "Then we'll be in trouble," Victor replied, his tone grim. "But we have to try." The tension mounted as we arrived at our destination, a small apartment on a dimly lit street that seemed ordinary. But I knew I was about to delve deeper into a world of horrors. The idea of hacking into the cult system made me uneasy, but there was also a spark of hope. If we could disable the site, we could save not only ourselves, but everyone still willing to step into that nightmare. "Are we ready for this?" I asked, already imagining the consequences. "We have to be," Danny replied, determination in his eyes. As soon as we entered the apartment, the atmosphere changed. The air was charged with electricity, as if the very space was aware of what we were about to do. And in that moment, a new wave of fear began to swell in my chest. The game was far from over, and I now knew we were about to plunge into something even darker. The glow of the computer screen illuminated the small room, casting shadows that danced on the walls, as if they were participating in a game too. The sound of keyboard clicks echoed, a constant noise that seemed to blend with my racing heart. Danny was beside me, his expression tense as we tried to decipher the site's code. The feeling of being watched hung in the air like a dark cloud ready to burst. "Sam, this doesn't make sense. How can something so simple be so protected?" he murmured, his eyes fixed on the screen. His tone carried a mix of frustration and fear. "I don't know, but we need to figure it out. We can't let them find us before we disable this," I replied, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Each click felt like a step closer to freedom, but also a step deeper into darkness. Suddenly, a noise from outside made me freeze. I glanced at the window, and a shadow passed quickly. "Danny, did you see that?" I asked, my voice almost failing. "I did. What was it?" he replied, but his gaze was already diverted back to the screen, as if the answer lay there. "Maybe it was a person, or something worse," I said, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But the truth was that with each challenge we completed, the line between reality and terror grew thinner. We focused our attention back on the computer. "Here," I exclaimed, pointing to a line of code that seemed different. "This could be the key to disabling the connection to the cult." "Be careful, Sam. Don't forget what Victor said about them always being one step ahead," Danny warned, his voice now serious. "I know, but we can't give up. If I can access the administrative part, maybe we can take this down once and for all," I responded, determined. With trembling fingers, I began to type. The tension in the air was palpable, and with each passing second, the feeling that something was about to happen intensified. The code started to unravel on the screen, revealing parts of a system much more complex than I had imagined. Then, as if my actions had triggered something, the screen flickered and a message appeared. "Welcome back, Samantha." My heart sank, and the words echoed in my mind. "Danny, look at this. They know who I am," I shouted, an icy fear coursing through my spine. "This can't be happening. You're not connected to them in any way, right?" he asked, disbelief written across his face. I don't know, but there's something here that..." My voice faltered as a new wave of memories began to flood my mind. Distorted images from my past started to surface, and the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in a disturbing way. "Sam, what's happening?" Danny asked, his concern growing. I remember there was something about a cult, something my mother mentioned when I was a child. I thought they were just stories," I confessed, desperation evident in my voice. At that moment, a shadowy figure appeared on the screen, and I felt my blood run cold. "You are the key, Samantha. You always have been," a familiar yet distorted voice whispered, as if speaking from a distant place. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You know who I am. The past never dies, and you are the leader destined to awaken what sleeps," the figure replied, and I realized it was my own shadow, a manifestation of what had always been hidden within me. "No, this can't be true. I'm not a leader. I'm not part of this," I screamed, denial boiling within me. "You have no choice, Samantha. Your actions have been part of a greater plan," the shadow insisted, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Danny looked at me, his eyes filled with confusion. "Sam, what's happening? Are you okay?" I turned to him, and for the first time, I noticed he seemed different too. Something in his posture, a glint in his eyes, made me hesitate. "Danny, are you involved too? What do you know?" He hesitated, and the tension between us was almost unbearable. "Sam, I just wanted to protect you. I didn't know it would go this far," he confessed, his voice low. The truth began to reveal itself like a nightmare. The game, the challenges, all of it was a theater, and we were merely pawns. What I thought was a path to freedom now felt like a labyrinth with no exit. The game had never ended. It had merely changed form, and in that moment, I realized my fate was intertwined with Danny's in a way I could never have imagined. With a look of despair, I knew the real challenge was just beginning. Shadow Explorers, what we have just witnessed, is only the tip of the iceberg lurking in the depths of the dark web. The story of Samantha and Danny reminds us that sometimes the real horror isn't in the monsters we imagine, but in the choices we make and the consequences they bring. Think about it. How many times have you clicked a link without a second thought? How many times have you accepted terms and conditions without reading them? Today's dark web horror story shows us that danger can be just a click away. Samantha entered this game seeking an easy way out of her financial troubles, but she ended up entangled in something much larger and far more sinister. She learned that sometimes the price of curiosity can be far too high. And Danny? Well, he reminds us that even those we trust the most can harbor dark secrets. But perhaps the most chilling revelation of all is the idea that Samantha may have been the key to something far more sinister from the very beginning. This forces us to question, how much do we really know about our own past? What dark secrets might be hiding in our own history? The dark web is not just a place on the internet, Shadow Explorers. It is a reflection of the darkest corners of the human soul, a place where our deepest fears and darkest desires come to life. And as Samantha discovered, once you enter, it can be impossible to escape. So, the next time you find yourself browsing online late at night, remember, not everything is as it seems. The game might be more real than you think. And the stakes? Well, they could be your very soul. Shadow Explorers, what would you do if you were in Samantha's shoes? How far would you go to uncover the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your theories and reflections may help us unravel even more mysteries lurking in the depths of the web. And remember, the dark web is always evolving, always adapting. Who knows what new horror stories it holds for us in the future? Stay tuned, because the next episode of Midnight Mysteries might be about something happening right now in some dark corner of the internet. Shadow Explorers, we have reached the end of yet another chilling episode of Midnight Mysteries. But remember, in the dark web, the end of one story is just the beginning of another, even darker one. You have all been incredibly brave to dive into this disturbing tale with us. The saga of Samantha and Danny has shown us that sometimes the true monsters aren't lurking in dark alleys or graveyards at midnight, but rather in the pixels of our screens and the choices we make online. If this episode made you question your own online adventures, then we've accomplished our mission. After all, a little healthy paranoia can be the difference between navigating safely and getting lost in the depths of the dark web. Now, if you truly enjoyed this plunge into the shadows, and I know you did, you delightful digital masochists, don't forget to give that like button a tap. It's like lighting a candle in the dark. It may seem small, but it illuminates the whole path for us. And speaking of lighting paths, how about subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications? That way, you'll be the first to know when we release new episodes. Who knows? Maybe the next mystery we uncover is about you, or someone you know. Share this video with your friends. After all, sharing terror is multiplying fun, isn't it? Plus, the more people who are aware of the dangers of the dark web, the safer we'll all be. Or at least, that's what we like to believe. Shadow Explorers, you are truly extraordinary. Your courage in facing these horrors week after week gives me, well, let's just say it sends shivers of pride down my spine. And before we go, I have a question for you. Have you heard about the mysterious mass disappearances occurring in small towns around the world? They say there's a bizarre pattern connecting them all. But that's a topic for our next episode. Until then, Shadow Explorers, stay vigilant. Remember, on the internet, not everything is what it seems. And sometimes, the real danger is just a click away. I'm Raven Shadowmere, and this was Midnight Mysteries. Until our next dive into the shadows.